alien, I'm everyone's friend. Whichever world I go, I just blend. All languages I speak, no doubt I'm so unique. I listen to their stories, I share some of mine. And when I gain some knowledge, my antenna shines. I am an alien, I'm everyone's friend.
The Cat and the Mice. Gugu was once invited to dinner by a Persian cat who lived in a house filled with the finest provisions from all parts of the world. Gugu was looking forward to go to the cat's house, as it had heard a lot about the kind of eatables there were. It imagined all night about the kind of food it would get to taste at the cat's table. But as the cat's house was rather far away, Gugu was looking for someone who would accompany it to go to the cat's house. But who would want to go without an invitation? So Gugu asked the cat if it could bring a friend along. The cat was not particularly amused, but agreed for Gugu's sake. Gugu asked its neighbour, the mouse, to accompany it to the cat's house. With fear gripping its eyes, the mouse strongly refused that it would never do such a foolish thing. On asking why the mouse was so afraid to the cat, the mouse goes on to tell the story that had happened a while ago. Once upon a time, there was an old house which was overrun with mice. They were having a party, with so many of them getting to stay under the same roof, and were very happy about it. But soon, the cat learnt about this and decided to feast on them one by one. It stealthily made its way into the house and began to catch one after another for each of its meals. Soon, the number of mice in the house started decreasing, as one by one they all went missing. One day, they spotted the cat inside their house and realized why the number of mice in the house had been going down steadily. From that day on, they kept themselves indoors and closed the holes in which they lived. The cat was no longer able to get them and perceived that they must be tempted somehow. So thinking, she devised an idea and executed the same by jumping upon a peg, suspending herself from it and pretending to be dead. One of the mice peeped out carefully, looked at the cat in the eye and said, "Ah, my good man, even though you should turn into a meal bag, we will not come near you." Hence from that day on, the mice made it a point to steer clear of the cat's way. On hearing this incident, Gugu realized how a person once deceived will always be doubly cautious. The Cock and the Fox. One day, Gugu was visiting the goat, who was beautifying itself to go meet the fox, as the fox had called the goat home for dinner. Gugu found it a little fishy that someone like the fox would invite anyone home for dinner. It felt the need to caution the goat and asked the goat if he would like to listen to a story before he left to the fox's house. The goat loved listening to stories and so readily agreed. It was a bright evening, and as the sun was sinking on a glorious world, a wise old cock flew into a tree to roost. Before he composed himself to rest, he flapped his wings thrice and crowed loudly. But just as he was about to put his head under his wings, his beady eyes caught a flash of red and a glimpse of a long pointed nose, and there just below him stood Master Fox. The fox asked him if he heard the wonderful news. The cock calmly asked him what the news was, without much excitement, as he had a queer, fluttery feeling inside him. He was very much afraid of the fox, as he very well knew all his cunning ways. The fox told him that his family, the cock's family, and all the other animals of the forest had agreed to forget their differences and live in peace and friendship from then on forever. The fox went on to say that it could simply not wait to embrace the cock and suggested that it come down to celebrate the joyful event. The cock exclaimed, "How grand! I am certainly delighted to hear the news." But even as he spoke in an absent way, he was stretching up on tiptoes and seemed to be looking at something afar off. The fox became anxious and asked him what it was that he saw. The cock replied that it looked to him like a couple of dogs were coming in that direction, as even they must have heard the good news. But the fox did not wait to hear it completely. off he started on a run. The cock asked him why he's running away when the dogs also are his friends now. The fox escaped by saying that they might not have heard the news and also that he had a very important errand which he had almost forgotten. The cock smiled as he buried his head in his feathers and went to sleep, for he had succeeded in outwitting a very crafty enemy. Gugu alerted the goat that it should always remain cautious of cunning people. The Crow and the Fox. Gugu lands in the midst of a jungle and sees a fox walking by. It told the fox that he comes from an unknown land and requests the fox to be friends with him. The fox readily accepts and shakes hands with Gugu and they become friends. Then the fox brags about how clever he is by telling a story to Gugu. On a bright summer morning, a crow was in search of some food as it was hungry. While looking around, it saw a big piece of cheese lying unattended. It looked so yummy that the crow decided not to share it with its friends, even if they begged for it. The crow looked around and saw that nobody was watching. Immediately, it picked up the cheese by its beak and flew high up towards the sky. After flying far, far away, the crow was tired, so it stopped on a branch to rest a while. It heard a voice saying, "I have never seen a bird as beautiful as you." On hearing these words, the crow was naturally curious and looked around to see who said that. The voice continued to say, "How do you keep your feathers so lustrous?" While still searching where the voice was coming from, the crow found that there was a fox standing below the tree, and that is where the praises were flowing from. The crow realized that this was a gimmick to take away the cheese and did not open its mouth. Instead, he looked away and pretended not to hear the fox's words. The fox did not give up. It went on to say that all the crow needed was a beautiful singing voice, and then it would be recognized as the most amazing crow ever. After making that statement, the cunning fox turned around, pretending to leave. On seeing this, the crow was determined to show off his voice and sing for the fox as loud as he could. And as the crow opened its mouth to sing, off fell the cheese out of its mouth to the ground. The fox was quick to turn around and pick up the fallen piece of cheese in its mouth. It thanked the crow in its mind and ran away from that place as fast as it could. The crow realized how foolish it had been in falling for the fox's trick, but it was rather too late. Juju thought to itself how important it is to think before we wink, or we could be easily deceived. The Dog, the Cock, and the Fox. One day, Gugu was walking by the woods when it met its friends the dog and the cock. Both the dog and the cock were in a very good mood and were singing and dancing, laughing loudly. On seeing this, Gugu begins to wonder what is keeping them so happy. It draws closer to them and asks them to share the reason of their happiness. The cock tells Gugu that they are celebrating their victory over evil. Gugu does not seem to understand this and looks at them questioningly. The dog elaborates what had happened the previous day. Being great friends, the dog and the cock set out on a journey together to the nearby village. But they were passing through the woods and it became night. So they decided to take shelter in the woods itself. They go to a nice big tree and decide to rest there for the night. The cock flies up and perches itself on the branch of the tree, while the dog finds shelter beneath the hollow trunk of the tree. When the morning dawned, the cock, as usual, did a cock-a-doodle-doo. As he crowed very loudly for a couple of times, the sound reached the sharp ears of a fox who was just beginning to feel hungry. At the sound of the cock, the fox thought of having him for a delicious breakfast. It looks around and comes in search of the cock. When it spots the tree, the fox stood below the branch on which the cock was and praised the cock about how sweet a voice it had. The unsuspecting cock feels very happy about it and thanks the fox for admiring its voice. The fox tells the cock that it would like to shake hands in person for owning such a melodious voice. On hearing this, the cock started doubting the fox's intentions. Hesitating to come down to meet the fox as requested by the latter, it instead suggests that the fox come up to meet the cock. So it suggests the fox to go around the hollow trunk beneath it and wake its porter so that he may open the door to let the fox inside. And when the fox approached the tree, the dog sprang out and caught the fox, tearing it to pieces. The cock continued to tell Gugu how they were celebrating their presence of mind to be alive that day. The Elephant and the Ant. One day, Gugu saw a group of cranes looking at the grasshopper and making fun of it for how tiny and feeble it was. Gugu went up to them and asked them what they were up to. The cranes told Gugu how small and fragile the grasshopper looked in comparison to themselves, and thus they were ridiculing him. Gugu told the cranes that they may not have heard the story of the elephant and the ant, which is why they are teasing the poor little grasshopper. This raised their curiosity levels, and they persuaded Gugu to elaborate on what it was saying. Gugu began to tell them about a particular elephant that lived in the forest, which was extremely proud about its structure. It used to think no end of its size and strength, due to which it would always go around troubling all other animals in the forest. There were a family of ants who were living close to where the elephant lived, and they were told by their parents not to go near the elephant as it would trouble them. All the ants obeyed what their parents said and would ensure to avoid the elephant's path every time they went out. One morning, as they set out to work, the mean elephant threw water on them. The youngest ant was very bold and turned around to ask what the elephant's problem, and why it always kept troubling everyone in the forest. The youngest ant was very bold, and it turned around to ask what was the elephant's problem and why it always kept troubling everyone in the forest. No one had the guts to speak to the elephant like that so far, and it was quite irritated that this small little ant was bold enough to question it. The elephant asked the ant to shut up and threatened to kill it if it spoke even another word more. The little ant had no choice and so kept quiet and went on its way. But it thought about how to teach a lesson to the elephant all night and woke up early next morning. Even as the elephant was snoring away to glory, it approached the elephant and, ensuring it was fast asleep, slid into its trunk. Once it was inside, it started biting the elephant. The elephant woke up quite irritated and did everything it could, but could not get the ant to come out of its trunk. It begged the ant to stop biting him, and the ant told the elephant that it is exactly how others feel when the elephant hurts them. The elephant apologized for its mistake and agreed to never repeat it again. On hearing this, the cranes understood that they should never underestimate anyone based on their appearance. Gugu feels good on having made the cranes understood their mistake.